Hi, I'm Nate, and today I'm going to talk about something called hero missions. Hero missions were something that we did overseas, in my case, Afghanistan, where we would retrieve human remains for transport back to their country of origin for all the things you can imagine. These missions took top priority. They were very important, and there are some unique elements to them that I think most people don't know about. Um, Specifically, I have one I'd like to talk about that impacted me very deeply, and that I was sort of strangely very involved with during my time in Afghanistan. So, when I wasn't flying, I did something called I was a battle captain. And a battle captain is an officer who leads the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, which is sort of like the brains of the task force. It's like a big sort of computer center with a team in there doing shift work with all the day-to-day, moment-to-moment goings-on of the task force. One of our most important things is deploying medevacs to casualties and things like that. So when I wasn't flying, I was working in the TOC as the TOC supervisor, and there was a particular mission where a senior enlisted U.S. Army soldier was killed outside of his base. I believe he was hit by an RPG, so it was pretty catastrophic. He was 38 years old. It was I think his third deployment, and I know he had a wife and 3 kids back home. So very tragic. So we knew that he couldn't be saved, and that we needed to get a flight in there as soon as possible to get his remains back home. Unfortunately, during that week or two, it was pretty bad weather up in that area. And so, try as we might, we could not get helicopters into that location to transport his remains. And his comrades had to preserve his remains as best they could at this outpost, which was very austere throughout that duration. And as you can imagine, that's not something that anybody wanted to have happen. So it was every day I would go into the TOC. It was, and when I wasn't there, it was in the back of my mind. It was on the back of everyone's minds. It's like, okay, how are we going to solve this? How are we going to get help this family get their loved one back, and those types of things. Well, it just so happened that I was out on a routine, we call them ash and trash missions, where you're just transporting troops and equipment around the battlefield. It's sort of like a mini airlines for all the troops in that region. So I was doing the ring route, the ash and trash mission, and then we got a call that the weather had cleared up enough for us to go in. And it was intense because I had been dealing with that daily in the TOC, trying to figure that problem out, and now here I was on a mission that was actually going to be the one to go in and retrieve him. So it was a very there was a lot of purpose there, as there usually is with a hero mission. But so what happened is these missions are the people at the base know what's happening, and what happens is if it's not mission essential, you stop what you're doing and you go outside to conduct a ceremony, an informal ceremony of sorts on the spot. So we came in, 2 Blackhawks. We shot an approach that was very deliberate. We came in together, and then we landed together, and then we shut down at the same time. And we're coordinating this on our radios between the 2 helicopters. We shut everything down, and we try to stop the helicopters at the same time. Once the helicopters are shut down, everybody that's available lines up in 2 columns on either side of the cargo doors on the side of, in this case, a Blackhawk. And so we ended up having 2 columns of, I don't know, 50 people on each side, maybe more. And everyone quietly stands and waits as the human remains are transported to the helicopter. And what happens is they'll usually carry the human remains on a stretcher in a body bag covered in the flag of their country. So in this case, it was an American flag. And if it's an Afghan National Army soldier, it'll be the Afghan flag. So, and so on and so forth. So they brought this soldier by, and it was disheartening because it almost didn't look like there was anybody there, which was very, sad and disturbing to see. And they loaded the remains very, gently into the back of the helicopter. The crew chiefs made sure it was secure and safe. And then as the remains are transported by, everyone renders a salute. And it's very surreal. I use that word a lot when I'm telling these stories because it is. I mean, you're in the middle of a combat zone. Stuff's going, going a mile a minute every day. Stuff's happening. There's things to do. And then suddenly everyone sort of stops what they're doing to take this time. And that's very poignant. These are Americans, Italians, Spanish, Lithuanians, Albanians, Slovenians, British, Canadians. Everyone that can stops what they're doing to pay respects for this, which is something a lot of people just don't know. Anyway, the remains were loaded and secured. The salutes were rendered. And then the crews, we got back in. And just as we came in, we start the helicopters back up in unison. So 2 engines on a Black Hawk, we're talking through that. We're cranking each engine. And then we take off together. And then in this case, we did sort of a flyby just to sort of, for people to say their final farewells. And then we departed back to Herat Air Base, where a larger fixed-wing airplane, I think it was a C-17 this time, was waiting to transport the human remains and, among other things, back to the States, back to their family. These missions are very different from combat-type missions. They're very different from routine transport missions, as you can imagine. They are the most special mission you can conduct. There's something very profound about transporting fallen soldiers or fallen troops of different countries, and being in such close proximity and knowing what that means for the families and knowing what that means for you. There's just a lot to that experience. There's many layers of depth to that feeling of doing something like that. And especially when it's just sort of dropped on you randomly in the middle of a routine day. That's something that will stick with me the rest of my life. It's sort of like a moment frozen in time that when I think about it, it's almost like it was yesterday, because it was so rich with experiences for me anyway on that day. It's something a lot of people don't know that we do. It's a special ceremony, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I purposely don't share the names, and I leave out details to protect the people involved in these things. But if you've been involved with missions like this, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, until next time. Thanks for watching.